Support for Wrong About Everything comes from Minnesota's credit unions. Credit unions are locally based, member-owned financial cooperatives that return earnings to members through higher savings rates, lower loan rates, and reduced fees. Visit mncun.org for more information.
Hello and welcome to another special episode of Wrong About Everything. I am Democratic strategist and the Puerto Rican heat, Javier Morillo.
I am former Republican Senate Majority Leader, Amy Koch.
And we are
Wrong about everything. Javier, is it special because it's just you and me again?
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes it better.
It
but
does.
It's also special.
I mean, that's what the polls are telling us.
Yes, that's what our internal research shows.
In our hearts.
Yes. But no, today is really it's a special edition. We already did an episode this week, but we also learned this week that State Auditor Julie Blaha, the Blauditor, as we affectionately know her, announced that she is not running for re-election. So I immediately texted her and said, "Hey, would you want to do like an exit interview with us?" And Julie has been a listener of the podcast for a long time, and she graciously accepted our offer. So, Julie, welcome and thanks for coming on.
It's so great to be here. Now that I'm not up for re-election, okay, now let's talk. Now, now I can go on here. This is a lot safer now. To be honest.
Yeah. So tell us. You decided not to run for re-election. So what's the scandal? What's going on?
Oh, I know. That was the thing. And talking about trying to figure out when.
Isn't that how everyone leaves office?
Well, that's just it. It's basically. I thought I was telling my staff we have to put something out now because if we don't, people think either I'm sick or I'm in a scandal or even worse, running for governor. And I just didn't want to be attached to that last one there.
That was my first. When I saw that you were not running, I was like, "Oh, is she running?" So when did you announce? Because typically news breaks after we're done recording. So I assume you waited for us to be done just to troll us.
Well, here's the thing. I had to get my head together. I didn't want, to get to you guys first and me not to be ready. I mean, you just don't want to, you don't want to have to walk into that cold, So, so it's Thursday morning, about 5 a.m. I think we had that too. Yep. 5 a.m. And so, yeah, it was this, we were also thinking with the governor, I didn't want to announce on the same day because if I announce that I'm not running again and he's not running again, then we're in a scandal together. If I announce that I am not running again, he announces he is running again, then I'm his lieutenant governor candidate, which is not likely, let's say.
And very fraught because we all thought, or we're kind of behind the grapevine, we're told Wednesday was going to be the announcement, but then I assume the vice president visit. I don't know. Or the
Wednesday for me or for Walz?
No, for Walz. We had all heard like Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, but
I'd already heard that. When I told him, I said, "Hey," for the same reason. I said, "Let's make sure we're not announcing on the same day." And so I want to get ahead of y'all. And so I knew they'd be dark this week. Is what they told me. Okay. So I knew that. So there's a time when once I knew a thing. And the state auditor is not always the person that gets the hot goss because we're known to be transparent. So we're generally not the first people to get gossip,
Well, I want to get into hear all about the job and your take on it, but
sure.
But let's sort of swing back because you've been in office 8 years, right? Almost 8 years.
I'm in 7. Yep, this is year 7.
7, and you were an unusual candidate when you first ran because you're not a CPA. If I don't.
No, that is usual. That is typical for this office. We haven't had an actual CPA in office for decades. I don't know the last person that was in this office that was an accountant.
But maybe what was different about you was what you were, which was
middle school math teacher. Well, a lot of people coming into this office. Probably the most consistent thing people were was rich. And I wasn't that. That is what made me probably the most unique for it because I'm running for the office because I actually am into the office. I started as a middle school math teacher. Then, of course, I was a labor leader, teachers union president, secretary treasurer of the AFL-CIO. And in that role, you really do spend a lot of time with really understanding what an audit can do and what it can't. Also, we would talk about pensions, and the Office of State Auditor has a pension division. So I lobbied on pensions then. Also, I worked on school finance. And so that is just complicated enough to help you understand tax increment finance. We have a TIF division. So I'm used to, I was working on complicated funding, seeing how important that funding is by seeing how it affected my students. And then also just really willing to fight for people who just want to do their job. You know, these are nice people, very nice people. It's a group of accountants and researchers and lawyers, and they're like good people, like really better than me. I mean, they're good people, and they're not even just non-partisan. They want to be non-political. They just want to do their job and just want to help people get things right. And so my job is to clear the way for them. I'm there as the person that gets to buffer them from the political winds in the legislature. I'm the designated extrovert. I'm doing all those things so that they can actually do their work. So frankly, though I think that I know of at least one accountant that is running that I would be great. But generally, accountants are in such short supply right now. It would be a waste to put them in the political position. If you're an accountant, we need you doing audits. We need you doing books. 75% of all CPAs could retire today. We're in trouble. Yeah, we're in trouble. And we're not going to be able to, we'll try to recruit our way out of it. We'll all try to pay our way out of it. But we're going to have to actually do some real restructuring, because there are not going to be enough humans to do the work the way we've been doing it now. So yes, in a way, if you have any ability to audit, I will follow you to your house. I'll bake you cookies every day. I will. I was at Pride in the parade, and someone said, "Oh, that's funny. I'm an accountant," and I literally jumped into the crowd, pushed everybody aside. Said, "We need to talk," and I will do that, because it is such. I will try to poach people right in front of your boss. I do not care. I will do it in front of your boss, and I don't care.
Is it possible to leverage tech like CPAI? Is that going to help us with this next?
A bit, but here's the thing. That's already coming in. People are already.
By the way, if no one's coined that term, TM, trademark, CPAI, I own it.
Wow.
Yeah, yes, have it. Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. CPAI.
It might be just a little too sexy for the profession, but and but no, it's so yeah, we can automate some things. You still need a human being to check, because when it comes to really sussing out what other human beings do, you still need a human touch on it. You still have judgment calls you have to make and things. So we're never going to get away with that, but we're going to have to tighten it up. I think we have technology now. We offer from the office accounting software for small Minnesota entities, and this we call it CTAS, and that is really key. And we have people saying, "Hey, switch to CTAS, or we're not going to. We're going to drop you as an auditee, because we can't. We need you to have a good system." And so what's happening is you've got so much turnover in local government. The town clerk is poor Earl, who was in the bathroom when they appointed him. He did not want to do it, but he had to walk out, and he had that rookie move, and now he's got to figure out the books too. Or you have people who have come in and said, "Oh, I'm following in a vacancy that was open for 4 months," and they're trying to find everything again. So we have that's a real challenge. And then you've got a shortage of auditors, so we can't pick up any slack. You come in and say, "Well, can you help me with this?" Like, actually, I can't. We are already also underwater. So we're going to have to start finding ways to share staff, I think, in a better way. We're going to have to make sure that we focus all of the audits and examinations we're doing so that they actually matter. Nothing extra. Don't just do an audit for fun. We do exactly what people need to make good decisions, and connect it real tight with risk. So we're going to have to do a lot of things, I think, to deal with these changes.
Let's take a step
back up a little bit. Oh,
tell us about what does the auditor do? What are your?
Yeah, maybe I should go about that, because that's probably a good way
of this podcast. Many know, but some don't, and then we are trying to attract other people. So,
this is how you get them. This is how you get them.
Out,
But and it's different in every state, and I think that's really important to know. So you should, if you don't know what your auditor does, that's not on you. It's not even on the school system. It is just different every single place. In Minnesota, it's evolved into a position that focuses primarily on local government. So we are overseeing. There's about $40 billion that goes through city, county, state. Soil and water districts, port authorities, school districts. Those are areas. What's that?
Townships? You do-
Townships, yep, towns too, yep. Townships, we also, if there's, so we do audits on that and help set some standards for that work as well. And we also support the group by trying to give them the technology they need, tools need to be successful. Then we collect a lot of data. A lot of that data people send in to somebody comes to us, and then we put it back out in a way you can use it to make decisions. And so it's basically examination, support, analysis. And ultimately, you do it so that local government works, because in a divided time, that's our last line of defense against chaos. You know, it could get weird in Washington, D.C. and get paralyzed in St. Paul. But if your city falls apart, nobody gets out of their driveway for 3 months, right? And the ambulance doesn't come and the lights don't turn on. So they don't have the luxury of an endless fight. As a result, they have to get things done. They find ways around a lot of things, a lot of difficulties that higher levels don't. And so we've got to protect that level.
So what is a thing that your office does that Minnesotans would miss if it were gone? Because I can admit that a lot of people don't know what the office does. So
I hear you, Javier.
I saw that tweet, so I'm ready, Amy. And so yes, what would they miss? Right now, it would be so much of what Minnesota passes at the state level is implemented through cities, towns, townships, school districts, or through our local level, more than most states, frankly. So as a result, the state has an interest in making sure that money's being used properly. So if you lose this level of oversight, what you have is that all your tax dollars that are going to that level, you would lose the check on that. And it's an area where, especially when you have shortages, where I think we're not seeing as much fraud as I think people are seeing maybe at other levels, seeing less fraud there, but we see more errors there. So, you know, whether it's fraud or whether it's an error, it's still money that doesn't go where it's supposed to go, and it's still a loss. And so if you lose us, you lose not only the examinations, the people checking on it, but also the people supporting that level with tools and with help. So what you would have is your township's kind of on its own, your city's more on its own, and what you'll find is more errors, and I think that eventually just means lost money.
And so as a function, the state auditor, cities are required to go, well, cities, except cities of the first class, I have to go through the auditor for their audits. Counties, all of them. So first audit for the first cities of the first class, they can actually do a private audit, but you still oversee that, correct?
Well,
counties, all counties can do their own private audit, but then you have oversight.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how this gets us back to where we started when I walked into this term, and maybe this might be a good time to talk about that. So when I come into office, it was under some attack, frankly. Relationships were just frayed or non-existent, whether that be between counties and cities and the League of Cities and the County Association and the media. Frankly, media relationships were shot. And there were just nobody was talking to anybody. And so and it was partly because the idea of taking away authority from the office. So the way this really should work is that my authority sets the floor for what I can do, right? Authority gives me the power to go where I need to go. And then what limits the limit is the fact that the legislature sets my budget. So if the authority gives me, lets me go places, my budget stops me from going places because I just don't have the resources, right? So that should be the check and balance. So what the lawsuit was about was they passed a law saying, hey, you know what? Counties can pick who their auditor is. And instead of the state auditor being basically the first shot, the first choice, have the choice, the first choice. And, and that's like Ohio, the state auditor does it all. And every level, it's a state auditor that runs it. They have 800 auditors. In Minnesota, however, schools are doing almost exclusively private. They're choosing their own auditor. So are cities, again, except for a few. Cities of the first class, and depending on when you grandfathered in, there's all these other things in there too. Or if we decide with our capacity, it makes more sense for you to go somewhere else, we can also let a client go. As we need to. And so when that went through, most of the work in the office, most of the audits were county level audits. So I think the idea was, wow, if we can't do county audits, we're not going to be doing anything. And our office is going to fall apart. And so the previous auditor sued a couple counties over that. And I think that for the most part, people would say that they lost that lawsuit. The one thing that came out of it, though, that I really organized the office around was that we can go wherever we need to go in the public interest. So I can do any audit that needs to be done in the public interest. Now, if I'm going to go in and say, I just want to do your audit, everything's going fine, you want to go use CLA, for instance, I'm going to have a hard time making a public case for that. But if you're having problems, it's going to be pretty easy for me to make the case saying, you know what, you can pay that guy too if you want, but we're going to come in and do your audit. We haven't had to do that in my term, but we could.
Okay, so you haven't done that. I was going to ask you because, a big story at the state capital, state level budget, which you do not oversee. We want to make it clear, you do not oversee the state budget, but there has just been rampant fraud. The U.S. attorney has said that he's found probably at least $1 billion and counting on a state level.
I think we have to be really careful about that, though. I'm hearing those numbers, and when I see them broken down, they're not necessarily. Everybody's calling it all fraud. Some of it is simply miscategorization. I mean, some of it really is documentation error. Some of it is some other things. So I think
let's call it hundreds.
But just to be clear, I think that we have an issue. We got issues. Absolutely.
But is that, you were saying before, most city and county stuff, what you find is more like errors, right? As you said,
it's errors. Yeah, it's more that kind of stuff. Probably because it's spread out more. So when I'm finding, if we find something, even for instance, Good Thunder, we found that the mayor had stolen, over $10,000. But that's about as high as we're going to get, because it's, we might find a lot of fraud, but we're finding it in $1,000 here, $500 there, 10,000 here. So it's spread out, and it's also spread out in areas where there's no media. So it's also hard to gauge it, right? To gauge it.
You're telling me the first time I never knew anything about Good Thunder Mayor.
Exactly. And you know what? And he was arrested for this a week before before election day, and he won re-election. So when people say if we had more oversight, would that change something? I don't know if we should just assume that we'll do it. Because again, this person was arrested and still got reelected.
So Julie, what is the thing that is there a big amount of money or something that you uncovered at some point? What's the biggest sort of get there? And then maybe it's the same thing, but what is the thing you're proudest of in your office?
Well, I think, one of the things, the thing I'm most proud of is that we've reestablished this office as being the leader on local accountability. Before this, it was coming in, the League of Cities did city stuff. No, counties did county stuff. And so everything came in, and the rules for oversight of local government are, we always like to talk about patchwork quilts. This one legit looks like a quilt. It's really, sometimes we make choices on population size, sometimes revenue size, sometimes structure of your office. There's all these different things, and they don't seem to be organized around like any theory. And we're moving to the idea of we have to get at risk, that we have to be putting everything toward risk. So we're developing tools for legislators so they realize how much risk they're covering with threshold that they're setting. We are, we're digging in and working on collecting audit data so you can see the trends in the errors that we're seeing. So that's, I think we're just moving toward a place where we're being more organized and just more scientific about how we talk about risk and moving toward that. And I think we'll need to do that, because the best way for us to focus our work is going to be to really understand what we're worried about. When I see people throw the word audit in a bill, you put audit in your bill, you get a visit from me. I'm going to come and ask, what do you really want here? Is it an audit? Is it an investigation? Is it reporting? What do you really want? What's the risk you're worried about? And we've got to start matching better and not just say, I'll put the word audit in there and wash my hands of it and call it a day. That may not have gotten at your concern at all. So that is what I'm most proud of. Also, I think the fear that we weren't going to be able to have enough, say, business to do. At this point, we've gotten to a place where a number of the counties that left us early on are now asking to come back. And unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to take them. We've literally had people that have said, we're never, we're gone. And they said, oh, well, we'd let you bid. And I can't. Prices of audits are just jumping through the roof. And as a result, ours is we're below the cost of most private firms pretty clearly. So even before, when they're saying we were so expensive, it's I'm pretty sure we aren't now. And I don't even know if we were then, but we sure aren't now. And in fact,
So
yeah.
So it's fair to say that your office saves money for local governments because otherwise their audits would be more expensive.
Or they can't get it. There are places that just can't find auditors. And so we are trying to also help people. We're getting lists of auditors together. So when you call in and no one will bid you, we'll even bid your job. We're trying to help you out. The biggest change probably that under my term was we took on the statewide single audit. That is a $20 billion project. And what Nobles, the legislative auditor, before he left, decided they didn't want to do what was called the single audit anymore. And the statewide single audit is basically the extra testing you do on federal programs over $1 million for the federal government. They're usually done along with your regular financial audit. We do them for lots of counties, lots of, are the cities that we work with. And they decided we don't want to do that anymore. I think it was capacity was part of it. They're also like, we're a state group. This is federal money. Is that really our game? And so I came in and said, well, hey, we are literally the best at single audits in the state. We do the most of them. We should be doing that. And you're public, we're public. Why not do it? And they kind of balked at that and they made us bid on it. And it's like, I don't think we should have to bid on this. I think there's a law saying we don't, but you know what? I will bid on this. Bring it. I was in sales before this for a little while, sold steel. And I'm like, yeah, we can bid. We'll figure, my predecessors had always said, we can't bid because of our price structure. It's like, well, we can figure out how to bid this. So we did. So we bid it and we came in as like the second lowest bid even. We're just above the bottom bid, best on quality. And we probably saved the state about $250,000 by taking over that audit. And not because the legislative auditors doing anything wrong. It's just that we had 60 people we could flood onto the project during our off time, which is how other firms are set up. They'll take their government audit work because it's off season from tax work. So if we take state work, which is on a different calendar than local government, then we're able to balance it out. So we were able to take on $20 billion more without expanding our staff significantly and saving the state money. So that was probably the biggest thing. And of course, every great accomplishment comes with the balancing thing. 2 weeks, we just started the first time we're going through the single audit, going and meeting everybody, getting set up. 2 weeks after we start, feeding our future rate happens. That is when that thing started. And it's like, oh, terrific. So this, we were like, oh no. But this is also why I didn't think that the legislative auditor should have let the single audit go. It's like, you know what, this is something that has to be as public as possible and in a place where you can get after somebody who's not doing it right. And so this really should stay in the most public space it can. That's why I wanted to pick it up. And I'm glad we got it. Because now, unfortunately, then that meant for the next election, people said everything was my fault. So we started after that. But what we do now is we've also taken that and are looking at trying to analyze the trends in that audit to help the state understand what they can fix going forward. So when you talk about the issues that we've had that go with fraud in Minnesota, they really match the national trend of dealing with vendors and privatization. If you look at the frauds that we're looking at, virtually all of them involve a private firm or a nonprofit. They're not public employees. And so I think our biggest problem right now, we could talk about getting more refs out there, more people checking things, more coaches on the field. We need enough players on the field. And we need to make sure that we know who's doing the work. And if we're going to outsource this work, we have to be honest with ourselves that there's additional risk there, and we better prepare for it. If we'd run the food program through school cafeterias, this wouldn't have happened, right? But nope, we weren't able to do that. So we went off-site, or we outsourced it, and we had this problem. The autism centers are outsourced situations. These are all situations where, again, I think we're pretty good at spending money. We're not always good at sharing money and overseeing that kind of sharing. And that was the most common finding during COVID in the whole country, was something called subrecipient monitoring. Means you weren't adequately watching your vendors. And so this is the issues that we're having are really typical. Now, again, feeding our future, I think there's a lot of reasons why I understand how that happened. I think so we can look at that. I think we learn from it. But I think the things that have happened more recently are more pertinent because they were happening in normal times. So let's look at these more recent issues where we're not watching our vendors adequately. So I think we have to either do a better job of watching our vendors, build some infrastructure there, or don't use as many vendors and bring some things back in-house.
But to be clear, so do you now, does your office investigate like say the issues in
Oh, see,
housing,
well, here's the thing.
or rather
Oh,
audit?
what can we investigate? That's jurisdiction, such a thing. We can investigate local governments. I can audit federal money at the state level. I can't investigate state stuff or federal stuff. So I can, but even the things we do, when we find things in the audit, we turn that over to inspectors general at the federal level. If we find things in a local audit, we'll usually turn it over to a county attorney. I can't enforce anything, right? There are things we can investigate. You find things in an audit, formal investigations I can do of local government. Like, for instance, Hmong Charter Academy, which is they've just come to a settlement with with the person who had misused $5 million and invested in 2 risky investments. We found that. And so that I believe later today or Monday, the Attorney General will be talking about the settlement they came to with the people that were in charge of that. That was one of the bigger investigations that we had. Single investigations was among Charter Preparatory Academy they literally were investing things in the Cayman Islands. Can't do that. Got to keep it safe in Minnesota, and they lost it.
So let me ask the question I know Amy is dying to ask. Like, why shouldn't we abolish the office of the auditor?
Okay.
Or should we?
I'll tell you.
Excuse me, that is a supposition.
I did see your tweet saying something about maybe we shouldn't. They should. The work should go to the legislative auditor. I think, is that what you said?
Well, there has to be oversight. I think that there is a way to streamline this office with other offices and the duties. I certainly don't want to not see oversight. I'm still a good Republican.
Yeah.
But I also think that we've got a lot of different disparate offices that could do this. And I think there's a way to combine that. So it's not, for me, it's not getting rid of the work. It's
right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think
to be clear, I'm not sure I disagree with that. And so I want to hear, Julie, what do you think?
It's really interesting. Again, how we're structured is unusual, right? We have, in most places, what our legislative auditor does is done by the state auditor. And in fact, Mattson, who had been both an auditor and a treasurer, and because he was being treasurer from Florida, it's one of the reasons we no longer have a treasurer, because they said, if you get this done from another state before remote work was a thing, maybe we don't need the office. And now his idea was, he thought we should combine auditor, treasurer, and secretary of state into a comptroller. And so how we're organized, I'm actually open to discussion on some of that kind of thing. But the work has to stay, because there aren't other people that can do it. And for a lot of places, we're their only call for help. If you're a fire relief association trying to take care of your investments to make sure you pay off your retirement benefits for firefighters, we're often the only place you can go for support. If you're, again, those township clerks, they call us, but they're not just calling us for understanding our technology. They're often asking bookkeeping questions, and even though we have other groups that are trying to help, we do need more support for local government on their financial things. We're expecting to carry water from the state. We need to be providing not only oversight, but also support to them.
So if we asked you, if I assigned you the task of like, okay, we need to put the job of the auditor into other offices, do you have a vision of what that would look like, or do you have an opinion on how that would be done? You said the previous auditor had it.
Yeah. You have in Oregon, the Secretary of State basically does what the state auditor does as well. They're combined there. At our county levels, we have auditor treasurers, right? We combine that together. I think the comptroller idea would have been the best choice when we got rid of treasurer. My concern is that we keep concentrating powers in these different spots. I think that auditing functions that we do, I don't think should necessarily go to the legislature, because if they go to the legislative auditor, that's where they're effectively going. And, we talk about the fraud that we've been talking about. Well, that's all the thing. Those are in the areas where the legislative audit commission has had the oversight. So I don't know if we want to add more there. It doesn't seem like we really got that tightened up yet. Okay. So I think that it should stay in the executive branch. If you're going to combine, that's my biggest thing is that I think it's still an executive branch function. I think that the legislative auditor has let go a lot of their financial stuff. They don't audit the state fair, even though the state fair is under them. That's a private firm.
Whoa,
yeah. Whoa.
Did you not know this?
Wait,
you have hit a hot button, which is the state fair board.
Who are they? And
Okay.
why are tickets so expensive?
And also, who are they? Like, that is our whole thing. We know we have ideas of membership, but honestly, who are these kingmakers?
This agricultural society? Oh my gosh! If you look back at one of the longest serving state auditor was Stafford King. He was almost 40 years. And his barn burner speeches he gave to the Agricultural Society, because at that time it was still overseen by the state auditor. It's quite a deal. It's an interesting crowd. I've worked there, when I was treasurer of the AFL. The treasurer runs the labor pavilion, and it's its own country. It's like the Vatican. It is its own place.
It is.
It's more like its own. I think it should be under us.
It's been in that
like local government. Yes. I'm with you. And so I think but that audit is they've sent that out private. And we don't talk about it. I think that one of the challenges when you see these financial audits, the everyday get her done, got to get it done, preventative work makes sense in the executive branch. The special reviews that Randall does, that the legislative auditor does, and so most of what we're seeing from her are not audits. They're called special reviews because they're not held to audit standards. They use similar procedures, but they're based on a topic that has to do with a choice the legislature made. It's a way for the legislature to evaluate their choices. Makes perfect sense. Somebody has to be doing the financial audit. If I was going to divide it up, if I was going to really redivide it, I would say all of the financial audits come to the state auditor. They do the state financial audit, state single audit, local financial audits, and performance reviews and special reviews, like the kind of one-off basically analysis of some policy. That should stay with the legislative auditor. That's how I would reorganize. Get all the boring, everyday, routine financial stuff that happens it's ongoing. Bring the ongoing stuff to the state auditor. Bring the momentary topic of the moment stuff and give that to the legislative auditor. I think that would be the better cut between the two offices.
Yeah, I think people don't understand that with the legislative auditor as well. They do auditing of the state budget areas, but they also are given topics every year as voted on in the legislature to say, go look at this, go look at autism centers and find out what's going on.
And one of the challenges there is that, at least with a financial audit, if there's a finding, we find a problem, we check it every single year until it's gone, until either the program ends or you fix it. And so these problems get solved in a different way because they come back year after year after year. They don't let the legislative auditor go back ever again. I know we talked about that a little bit this session, but if you're going to have her do that many special reviews every year, well, they'll never be able to go back and see if anyone fixed it. So I'm not surprised they're not as successful as they could be, because if you could, all you have to do is kind of weather it for a year, and then after that, no one's going to check again.
So here's where I'm revising mine. I think we keep the legislative auditor, love what they do. They're like they're arm of that.
Do more of that.
I'm warming to this idea of a comptroller, which would be kind of secretary, state auditor, comptrolling.
Right. It's an interesting idea. I mean, it's an interesting idea. And talk about sizes of our offices. Yeah, that else.
Right. It feels more like something that fits with the world we live in now.
Right. I'd say that, let Judy have all the headline grabbers. Let Julie have every boring thing. My job, her job, legislators love
the next Julie.
What's that?
The next Julie, because you're.
I still got a year here for the next year. Let that, let the legislative auditor handle those. She can handle the headlines. Let my office do the preventative work. And so her job might be to get into the headlines, according to a legislator. My job would be to keep everybody else out of them. And so I think there's a better cut there. Give them that financial stuff back down.
Legislative auditor. Obviously, the comptroller would work with the legislative auditor to provide information as needed. And
right.
Yeah,
we can certainly do that. And also, I would suggest that when you have the legislature in charge of routine every year kind of a things, it doesn't get much attention. They're going to go after that one-off hot topic. They don't spend a lot of time talking to, for instance, a lot of these issues we saw during COVID. These are things that were showing up on the single audit before. But that's not something legislators are necessarily going to be calling out. And
you keep saying single audit. Can you break that down?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, let me say that again. The single audit, a single subject audit, is when you're doing a set of tests on just one little program or something. If you get more than $1 million from the federal government, they said, all right, we'll give you $1 million, but you have to have an auditor come in and do some testing that you're following our rules. And so that's called the single audit. And there's about $20 billion in funds that are audited under that structure in Minnesota. So these federal funds that come there are audited now by us instead of the legislative auditor. The legislative auditor does the state level money and still looks at the financials of the money that comes from the state. We look at the financials now of the money that comes from the federal government. Now, and that's the thing, but that was the thing. They dropped this financial thing, and it was ironic that they dropped the thing that now we're talking about the most. And yet the legislature was willing to drop that and say, yeah, we don't need to do that oversight. And so I think that I have a problem when the legislature doesn't always understand or isn't able to provide that kind of in the weeds oversight that somebody who has one person who you could throw out of office for. And so as a result, I've never heard a legislator ever say, hey, we got to talk about these findings about failure to reconcile bank statements. They don't talk about that. Nobody talks about that. And you can't, who do you get mad at, right? If the legislative auditor starts trying to scream these problems from the rooftops and no legislator takes up the cause, it's just shouting into the wind. And I think that's one of the challenges we've seen is where she'll say, I've been saying this for years. Right, yeah, right. Legislators have been hearing it for years, but they're not able to do, they're not doing anything about it.
They are political creatures, right? And
exactly.
There's a bit of they have 1,000 different things. And
this is why you'd want executive branch to do that, because we're all implementation. They're about the policy. They're about the new issue, the new problem. We're about just making it work.
In our proposal, oversee and take back the state fair audit, because then I think you may have me on board.
All right. Okay. But that would be that. Yeah, that could definitely be a thing. I would totally take this. I would love
I see you, Ag Society.
So
love you.
So Julie, I assume that you regularly have beers with other constitutional officers and just kick back.
We don't have beers. We have texts. I say things that I think brighten their day or should brighten their day that I think are hilarious.
You send gifts.
I so believe that you're the person in the constitutional officers thread.
I am not the only one, though. I am not the only one that does that.
You're the mean person.
I'm probably the best at it. I would say I'm the best at it, though Steve tries. Steve works at it too. So yeah, we're saying, why? Okay, what's the next question then? I'm wondering.
And then who is running for governor? The thread.
My honest next question is, what will you miss about being a statewide elected official, and what will you be glad to get rid of?
I will absolutely miss every single person I work with, even the I'll miss the guy that his first meeting with me 2 months into my office, they said, hey, I'm Charlie Sanow from Southern Minnesota, the Southern Minnesota Health Group, and we're going to sue you. And I'd say, well, great to meet you, Charlie. We're going to win. And then we became great friends after that. And it literally is the kind of relationships I've been able to have. Again, local government, you don't get to have permanent enemies. You just can't. So we get to get along and figure things out. I really miss that there are so many things I get to work on that the red and blue teams haven't claimed yet. I can talk about roundabouts, and we don't necessarily have a red and blue side on that. We don't necessarily always have a red and blue side on the ditch fund. And so you've got these nonpartisan places that still exist. And again, my staff is amazing. People call me the honorable, which is hilarious. Now they apparently have to call me that for the rest of my life, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Right. We get to do it. Yeah, same thing. Yeah. And so I'm going to do that. What I won't miss is being blamed for things that I have absolutely no control over at all, and no ability. And the people who are doing that, again, these are trolls. These are not the people I should be listening to, but they know that it wasn't me, and they don't care. They don't care. They're just they love saying it, so they're going to keep saying it. And as a result, it's such a distraction from actual things that are happening. And so being blamed for feeding our future has just been frustrating. It shows not only do you not understand what our office does, do you don't understand what an audit is. Judy Randall had a great example of what an audit really is. It's like if you got a horse barn, right? As the auditor, I'm going to come out, I'll check to make sure the lock works. I'm going to check to make sure the lock works, make sure you have a plan to lock it up every night. But then I leave. You still have to lock it up every night. If your horses get out, that's not on me. You were supposed to lock the door. And I think so often it's tempting because it's easier to say, well, we're going to blame, they'll say, why didn't you catch feeding our future? Well, one, an audit wouldn't catch that. And even if it did, I wasn't the auditor. Yet when you say, well, I think you should ask the legislative auditor that. Oh, she's great. There's no way she missed anything. It's like, well, okay, then it's just political what you're saying here.
I never thought about you. I always think why weren't the agencies checking?
Well, there's a lot of it. And I think ultimately though, so as we look at the plans, people are responding to it, right? You've got some people, like Gustafson and the Republicans in the legislature who are looking at adding more refs effectively. If this is a football game, they want more refs. They want more people there to catch stuff. The governor's approach with inspectors general being more of like an internal audit function is like adding coaches. You can have refs, but you still need someone to make people run laps when they get back to the field house. You still have to have somebody who makes the fixes that the refs call out. But the thing nobody's talking about is the players. Again, we're not talking about the fact that the problems we've had managing this much outsourcing and privatization, and also the fact that we just don't have enough. We're shorthanded. We're not enough players on the field. So you can add all the coaches you want, all the refs you want. If you don't have enough people to get the work done, yeah, they can shout at them all they want. They can't make it. They can't make something out of nothing. It's like the movie Office Space when he talks about how many bosses he has. You don't need one more person to yell at you. You need someone to do the work. And so the through line here is either the wrong people doing the work or not enough people doing the work. And we need to talk about that too.
Well, I think there's an accountability issue as well, because no one's been called out at all for what's been going, what went on. And
I don't think that's true.
And I don't believe it's one person, but something went wrong and we still don't know. Like something went terribly wrong.
Well, when I look at the reports, though, we do know some of the things that went wrong, and some of them were lack of staffing. We do know that. In fact, that is happening all across the country. The biggest thing I read on my audits is in response to a finding, they have to tell us what happened. And often I get turnover, retirement, vacancy. That is the most common words I'm getting on audits. At the local level, that's also what I'm seeing in the state audits. That's also, what people are calling out, saying, here we are trying to figure this stuff out when we don't have staff for this, and we're trying to do it in a weird setup. And so as a result, we don't have enough people to both watch the work and do the work. So if you're the person on the front line, what do? Are you going to say, I'm going to do the documentation. I'm going to look this person in the eye who needs food. And I'm like, sit tight. I got to write this down. So you're going to drop some of that documentation, and that's going to cause some problems because you can't both do the work, oversee the work at the same time. We are not staffed up to have the level of accountability that we want. And we can say whatever we want to do. We can make any process we want. If you don't have enough people out there, it's just not going to happen.
So I need to say that the main reason I'm bummed that you're not running for re-election is that our old friend and colleague on Wrong About Everything, Karen Moratz, and I developed this idea many years ago what your ad should be. So if you didn't know Julie Blaha before, you've experienced a little that she talks a lot, she talks fast, she's always going. And so our imagined ad was Julie Blaha running and then stopping and saying, I've been up all night and auditing the F out of this state.
Yep. It was a great idea. It was ahead of its time.
It was. And also it would be auditing the F out of these local governments, your townships, your cities. It would get a little lengthy.
Yeah, that's just it. But the F was the important part, I think. But, it's, again, I love the work. And I one thing I love about it is I still get to do real work. One thing, if you have a very small staff, And I really rebuilt the staff. When I came in, the previous auditor only had a part-time comms person. That was it for the staff that was connected to her. That's all. No scheduler, no chief of staff, nothing else. I've actually now to the place where I have 3. So I have very much increased percentage-wise the staff, but building back some of this infrastructure in the office so that our office can not just do the work, but share the work. Because if you don't have enough people to communicate, if you don't have enough people to support each other, the work never gets out the door. And so another important thing I did was rebuild admin staff, rebuild communication staff, started up press conferences, and had press conferences for about 10 years. And so so we make sure that all this information does nothing if it doesn't get into somebody else's hands. And so I'm really proud of the fact we've been able to do that. But even so, we're still a small group. So I still get to play with Power BI, which I've just been learning to make sweet calculators and dashboards.
Well, Julie, you've been a friend of the podcast for a long, long time. And we appreciate your service. Amy and I have talked about doing a series with like local folks, the people who do the local stuff in your, who know all about a sewer in a township, or do all those things, because there's a lot of government that people don't see, and you're probably at the top of government that people are not really sure what it is that it does. So I hope this has enlightened some folks, enlightened some listeners, and just really thank you for your time.
I hope it inspires some people to do local government too. If you actually want to make a thing real, go local. You lose faith in everything else. There's something at your local level where somebody is solving a problem, and in a good way, in a bipartisan way. Get involved in that. It'll restore your faith in all of this.
Amy, any closing thoughts?
No, I want to say thank you. You have been, so a couple things. I always make clear when I have issues with the auditor, it is not with the current auditor. It has more to do with like the structure of the office, because
you've been very good about that.
You're a delight. And are always willing to come on and talk about things and debate things. I mean, like you said, nobody tells you anything because you just believe in transparency. That's very much you. You're very much you're entirely transparent in all ways. And it's been I was surprised to hear your announcement. I, of course, also, like everyone, went, what else is she running for? But I also love that, right? That you're just like, okay, that's good. I've served my time. I'm going to go do something else.
It's right for the office. You don't want to wait till everything's falling apart and then also try to go transition to a new leader. You know what?
Leave it on a high note. Here you go.
Well, that, and if things are going well, where's the fun in that? I want to, let's find something that's a mess.
Well, I got some ideas for you. But I got your next gig. We'll talk.
Yes. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Oh, are you endorsing anyone for your seat?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm not. Far, the people though that I've talked to, me. By the way, Republicans are not exactly streaming in my office talking to me, but about the office. But everybody that I've talked to actually cared about local government. It wasn't rich kids waiting to be governor. It wasn't someone, I just want a title. It was really people who all have local government experience, city council, mayor. They all are actually in the trenches doing the work that we support. And I think that's the first time in a long time that we've attracted that kind of a candidate pool. And I'm really, really excited and proud of that.
That's awesome. Well, with that, I am Democratic strategist in the Puerto Rican heat, Javier Murillo.
I am in favor of a comptroller idea, Amy Koch.
And we are
wrong about everything.